On a crisp autumn morning in 1950, the Virginia courthouse stood as an imposing symbol of authority, its marble columns casting long shadows across the steps where Jackie Robinson stood, adjusting the silver cross that hung from his neck. The baseball legend had faced countless challenges on the field, but today he would encounter a different kind of prejudice, one that would reveal a side of him few had witnessed before. Judge Walter Hoffman's reputation for strict adherence to courthouse dress codes preceded him, but even the seasoned courthouse staff were taken aback by the particular attention he paid to the man who had broken baseball's color barrier. The morning sun streamed through the courthouse windows, illuminating the tension that hung in the air like dust motes caught in the light. Mary Collins, a young journalist who had been covering the local courthouse beat, noticed something different about Robinson's demeanor that morning. While others might have shown nervousness before Judge Hoffman, Robinson carried himself with the same quiet dignity that had helped him navigate the hostile waters of professional baseball. His suit was impeccably pressed, his tie perfectly knotted, and around his neck, the silver cross that would soon become the center of an unexpected legal battle. Robert Phillips, the courthouse clerk, had seen countless defendants come and go, but something about this morning felt different. Perhaps it was the way Robinson studied the courthouse proceedings with keen attention, or how he occasionally jotted notes in a small leather-bound notebook. This wasn't just another athlete showing up for a routine court appearance. This was a man who had clearly come prepared. The morning docket was proceeding as usual when Judge Hoffman's gaze fixed upon Robinson's silver cross. The courtroom fell silent as the judge's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Mr. Robinson, in my courtroom, we maintain certain standards of dress. That religious symbol has no place here." Patricia Stevens, the court stenographer, found her fingers hovering over her machine as she watched the scene unfold. In all her years recording courthouse proceedings, she had never seen Judge Hoffman single out a piece of jewelry, particularly not a religious symbol. Her experienced hands trembled slightly as she began recording what would soon become a remarkable exchange. Officer David Brown shifted his weight uncomfortably near the courtroom entrance. He had been briefed about Robinson's appearance that morning, but nothing had prepared him for the electric tension that now filled the air. As a longtime baseball fan, he knew Robinson's reputation for maintaining composure under pressure, but this was different from anything that could happen on a baseball diamond. William Anderson, Robinson's attorney, started to rise from his seat, legal papers in hand, but Robinson gently touched his arm, silently indicating that he would handle this himself. The gesture spoke volumes about the man who had spent years carefully choosing his battles, knowing when to let others speak for him and when to stand alone. Harold Matthews, the prosecutor, watched with growing interest as Robinson stood, his posture straight but not confrontational, his expression composed but determined. Matthews had prosecuted hundreds of cases, but something told him he was about to witness something unprecedented. "Your Honor," Robinson began, his voice carrying the same quiet strength that had earned him respect both on and off the field, "I believe there might be a misunderstanding about the legal precedent regarding religious expression in courtrooms." Judge Hoffman's eyebrows rose slightly, clearly not expecting this response from a baseball player. "Mr. Robinson, this is not a sporting event. This is a court of law, and I determine what is and isn't appropriate in my courtroom." The judge's words hung in the air as Robinson reached into his briefcase and withdrew a document that would change the entire dynamics of the morning. Mary Collins leaned forward in her seat, her reporter's instinct telling her she was about to witness something extraordinary. "Your Honor, if I may," Robinson continued, "I would like to cite the Supreme Court's recent decisions regarding the First Amendment's protection of religious expression, particularly in public institutions." He began to reference specific cases with the precision of a seasoned legal scholar, his voice never rising, his manner remaining respectful but firm. The courtroom watched in amazement as Jackie Robinson, known to most as the man who integrated baseball, demonstrated a command of constitutional law that few had expected. Judge Hoffman's expression shifted from dismissive to attentive as Robinson methodically laid out legal precedent after legal precedent. Patricia Stevens' fingers flew across her stenotype machine, capturing every word of what was quickly becoming one of the most remarkable exchanges she had ever recorded. The quiet precision of Robinson's legal argument stood in stark contrast to the judge's initial brusque dismissal. William Anderson sat back in his chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He had known about Robinson's self-taught legal expertise, had witnessed his client's late-night studies of constitutional law, but seeing it in action was something else entirely. This was the same dedication that had helped Robinson master baseball, now applied to the intricacies of legal discourse. Robert Phillips found himself holding his breath as Robinson concluded his initial argument. The baseball legend had just delivered what amounted to a masterclass in constitutional law, all while standing accused of a simple dress code violation. The clerk had seen countless attorneys argue before Judge Hoffman, but few had matched Robinson's calm precision. Officer David Brown noticed how the other courtroom attendees had shifted in their seats, leaning forward to catch every word. The tension in the room had transformed from anxiety to anticipation, as everyone waited to see how Judge Hoffman would respond to this unexpected display of legal expertise. Harold Matthews couldn't help but admire the skill with which Robinson had constructed his argument. As a prosecutor, he had faced many passionate defenders of constitutional rights, but rarely had he seen someone combine such thorough legal knowledge with such dignified delivery. Judge Hoffman, known for his quick decisions and firm stance, took an uncharacteristically long moment before responding. The morning sun had shifted, casting different shadows through the high courthouse windows, as if the very light was adjusting to witness this remarkable moment. Mary Collins scribbled frantically in her notebook, knowing that she was witnessing not just a legal proceeding, but a moment that would add yet another layer to the legend of Jackie Robinson. This wasn't just about a cross or a dress code. This was about dignity, respect, and the power of knowledge to challenge assumptions. The silence in the courtroom grew thick as Judge Hoffman studied the legal documents Robinson had referenced. The baseball legend stood quietly, his presence commanding respect not through intimidation or anger, but through the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly where he stood, both legally and morally. The morning had started as a simple dress code violation, but it had transformed into something far more significant. In the span of less than an hour, Jackie Robinson had once again challenged preconceptions, not with his athletic prowess this time, but with his intellectual acumen and deep understanding of the law. As Judge Hoffman prepared to respond, the courtroom held its collective breath. They had come expecting to see a baseball player defend himself against a minor infraction. Instead, they were watching a man who had already changed the face of America's pastime demonstrate that his impact on society would extend far beyond the baseball diamond. Judge Hoffman cleared his throat, the sound echoing through the hushed courtroom. His initial dismissiveness had been replaced by something more complex, a mixture of surprise and growing respect. "Mr. Robinson," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority but now tinged with curiosity, "you speak of constitutional law with surprising familiarity. However, this court has established precedents regarding appropriate attire." The judge's attempt to reassert control over his courtroom only served to provide Robinson with another opening. The baseball legend reached into his briefcase once more, withdrawing another carefully prepared document. Mary Collins noticed how his hands moved with the same deliberate precision she had seen him display on the baseball diamond. No wasted motion, no unnecessary flourish. "Your Honor," Robinson responded, his voice carrying clearly through the courtroom, "I have here a comprehensive review of this court's dress code rulings over the past decade. You'll notice that while there are indeed precedents regarding appropriate attire, there is a distinct pattern of exemptions for religious expression, particularly when such expression does not disrupt court proceedings." William Anderson watched his client with quiet pride. They had prepared for this moment, knowing Judge Hoffman's reputation, but Robinson's execution was flawless. The attorney had seen many defendants crack under the judge's stern demeanor, but Robinson's composure remained unshakable. Harold Matthews found himself leaning forward, legal pad forgotten on the table before him. As a prosecutor, he had initially viewed this as a simple matter of courthouse protocol. Now, he was witnessing a masterclass in constitutional law from a man most knew only as a baseball player. Furthermore, Robinson continued, his finger tracing down the document as he spoke, "I would direct the court's attention to the Jenkins v. State case from 1947, where this very courthouse ruled in favor of allowing religious symbols when they are worn in a manner that maintains the dignity of the court. He paused, allowing the weight of the precedent to settle in the air. Robert Phillips, from his position near the judge's bench, could see Judge Hoffman's expression shifting. The clerk had witnessed countless attorneys attempt to challenge the judge's rulings, but never had he seen someone do it with such a precise combination of respect and unwavering conviction. Officer David Brown found himself remembering all the baseball games he had watched where Robinson had faced down hostile pitchers with the same calm determination he now displayed in the courtroom. The security officer had been prepared for potential disruption today, but instead was witnessing a different kind of strength altogether. Patricia Stevens' fingers continued their dance across her stenotype machine, recording every word of what she already knew would become a frequently requested transcript. The quiet power of Robinson's legal argument was all the more impressive for its restraint: no raised voices, no dramatic gestures, just the methodical presentation of irrefutable facts. "Mr. Robinson," Judge Hoffman interjected, his tone notably different from his initial admonishment, "while your knowledge of legal precedent is impressive, you must understand that this court maintains certain standards." "If I may, Your Honor," Robinson interrupted with such polite firmness that even the judge fell silent, "those standards are precisely what I am addressing. The First Amendment's protection of religious expression has been consistently upheld by courts across this nation, including yours. To selectively enforce dress codes in a manner that infringes upon religious freedom would not only contradict established precedent but would potentially expose this court to constitutional challenges." Mary Collins' pencil moved furiously across her notepad, capturing not just Robinson's words but the shifting dynamics in the courtroom. The story she had come to cover, a simple dress code violation, had transformed into something far more significant. Harold Matthews found himself nodding unconsciously as Robinson spoke. The prosecutor had argued hundreds of cases in this courtroom, but rarely had he seen someone so effectively combine legal knowledge with personal dignity. This wasn't just about a silver cross anymore. It was about the fundamental principles of American justice. William Anderson deliberately remained silent, understanding that his client was accomplishing something larger than just defending against a dress code violation. Robinson was demonstrating that knowledge and dignity could be more powerful weapons than anger or defiance. The morning sun had climbed higher, its light now streaming directly through the courthouse windows, creating an almost theatrical illumination of the scene. Robinson stood in this natural spotlight, the silver cross at his neck catching the light as he continued his legal argument. "Your Honor," Robinson pressed on, "I would also draw the court's attention to the recent Supreme Court decision in McCollum v. Board of Education. While that case dealt specifically with religious instruction in schools, the court's emphasis on religious freedom in public institutions has direct bearing on the matter before us today." Judge Hoffman's fingers drummed lightly on his bench, a habit his regular courtroom attendees knew indicated deep thought. The judge was known for his quick decisions, but Robinson had presented him with a legal argument that demanded careful consideration. Patricia Stevens noticed how the other courthouse staff had abandoned any pretense of routine business, all eyes fixed on the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. The quiet scratch of her stenotype keys provided a subtle soundtrack to Robinson's measured words. "The Constitution," Robinson continued, his voice taking on a quiet passion that filled the courtroom, "guarantees not just freedom of religion, but freedom of religious expression. This protection doesn't end at the courthouse steps. In fact, one could argue that it's particularly crucial within these walls, where the principles of American justice are meant to be upheld in their purest form." Officer David Brown watched as several spectators in the courtroom nodded in agreement. The security officer had been prepared for tension of a different sort today, but instead found himself witness to a demonstration of how real change could be achieved through knowledge and dignity. Robert Phillips thought about how many times he had seen defendants intimidated by Judge Hoffman's stern demeanor, how many had fumbled their words or backed down from their positions. Robinson showed no such uncertainty, his arguments flowing with the same grace that characterized his base running. The judge's next words surprised everyone in the courtroom. "Mr. Robinson, would you be willing to share copies of the cases you've cited? I find myself, interested in reviewing them in detail. The request represented a remarkable shift from his initial dismissive tone. Mary Collins captured the moment in her notebook, understanding that she was witnessing not just a legal proceeding, but a moment of transformation. Here was Jackie Robinson, who had already changed baseball through his courage and dignity, now demonstrating that the same qualities could transform a courtroom. William Anderson silently passed the relevant documents to his client, watching as Robinson approached the bench with the same confident stride that had carried him around countless baseball diamonds. The attorney knew that history was being made, not with dramatic confrontation, but with quiet, irrefutable competence. Harold Matthews observed how even the other attorneys present in the courtroom had stopped their own work to watch Robinson present his case. The prosecutor had seen many challenges to courthouse authority, but never one handled with such skillful respect for both the law and the court's dignity. As Judge Hoffman began to review the documents, Robinson stood quietly, his posture relaxed but attentive. The silver cross at his neck caught the light again, no longer a point of contention but a symbol of something larger, the right to stand firm in one's beliefs while respecting the institutions meant to protect those very rights. The morning had transformed from a simple matter of courthouse protocol into a profound demonstration of how justice could be pursued through knowledge and dignity rather than confrontation. Jackie Robinson, who had already proven himself a master of breaking barriers through controlled strength, was showing yet another way to change minds and challenge assumptions. The courtroom remained silent as Judge Hoffman studied the legal documents before him, his reading glasses perched on the edge of his nose. The morning had stretched into early afternoon, and the quality of light streaming through the high windows had changed, casting longer shadows across the judicial bench. Jackie Robinson stood patiently, his presence a study in contained strength, while the entire courtroom waited for the judge's response. Mary Collins glanced at her watch, realizing that the ordinary court schedule had been completely disrupted by this extraordinary confrontation. Yet not a single person had left the courtroom. Even attorneys waiting for other cases remained, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented in legal history. Finally, Judge Hoffman looked up from the documents, removing his glasses with deliberate slowness. His expression had transformed completely from the dismissive authority he had displayed earlier that morning. "Mr. Robinson," he began, his voice carrying a note of genuine respect, "your knowledge of constitutional law is not just impressive, it's thorough and precisely applied." William Anderson watched as his client maintained the same dignified composure he had shown throughout the morning. The attorney had seen many legal victories, but few had carried the weight of cultural significance that this moment promised. "The cases you've cited," Judge Hoffman continued, "particularly Jenkins versus State, do indeed establish clear precedent regarding religious expression in this courthouse." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "More importantly, your presentation of these arguments demonstrates a deep understanding of not just the letter of the law, but its spirit." Robert Phillips, the court clerk, was already making notes about what would surely become one of the most requested court transcripts in the courthouse's history. He had witnessed countless legal arguments in this room, but never one that so perfectly combined dignity with legal expertise. Harold Matthews found himself nodding in agreement with the judge's words. As a prosecutor, he had often argued for strict interpretation of courthouse rules, but Robinson's argument had illuminated the larger constitutional principles at stake. The baseball legend had managed to elevate a simple dress code violation into a meaningful discussion of fundamental rights. Furthermore, Judge Hoffman added, his voice taking on a tone of public reflection, "You've reminded this court of something crucial, that the principles we uphold here must align with the constitutional protections that form the foundation of our legal system." Patricia Stevens' fingers captured every word, knowing that this transcript would likely be studied in law schools alongside the very cases Robinson had cited. The stenographer had recorded thousands of proceedings, but few had carried such clear historical significance. Officer David Brown observed how the entire atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. What had begun as a confrontation had transformed into something more akin to a legal seminar, with Jackie Robinson as the unexpected professor. The security officer had been prepared for tension, but instead found himself witness to transformation. "In light of your arguments," Judge Hoffman continued, and upon review of the cited precedents, this court finds no legitimate basis for requiring the removal of your religious symbol. He paused, then added something that caused a ripple of surprise through the courtroom. In fact, Mr. Robinson, I owe you an apology for my initial approach to this matter. Mary Collins' pencil nearly dropped from her fingers. In all her years covering the courthouse, she had never heard Judge Hoffman apologize to anyone. The significance of this moment grew with each passing second. Robinson's response demonstrated the same grace that had carried him through his response to the initial confrontation. Your Honor, no apology is necessary. The law exists to guide us all, and today it has done exactly that. His words carried no hint of triumph or vindication, only respect for the legal system itself. William Anderson watched as several of his fellow attorneys in the courtroom exchanged meaningful glances. His client had just accomplished something remarkable, not just winning a legal argument, but doing so in a way that enhanced rather than diminished the dignity of the court. However, Judge Hoffman continued, his voice taking on a tone of broader significance, this incident has brought to light the need for this court to review its policies regarding religious expression. Mr. Robinson, your argument today will serve as a foundation for establishing clear guidelines that protect both the dignity of these proceedings and the constitutional rights of those who appear before us. Harold Matthews made a note on his legal pad, already anticipating how this decision would affect future cases. Robinson had managed to transform a personal challenge into a precedent that would benefit countless others, a pattern that seemed to define his life's work. Patricia Stevens noticed how Robinson's hand moved briefly to touch the silver cross at his neck, not in triumph, but in quiet acknowledgement of what it represented. The small gesture carried enormous weight in the context of what had just transpired. Furthermore, the judge added, I would like copies of today's transcript to be made available to other courts in the district. Mr. Robinson's argument regarding the balance between courthouse dignity and religious freedom deserves wider consideration. Robert Phillips began making the necessary notations, knowing that this case would soon become a reference point for similar issues throughout the judicial system. What had started as a simple dress code violation had evolved into a landmark discussion of constitutional rights. The afternoon sun now streamed directly through the courthouse windows, creating an almost ethereal quality to the light in the courtroom. Mary Collins couldn't help but note how it seemed to highlight the historic nature of the moment. A baseball legend had just shaped legal precedent through the power of knowledge and dignified discourse. Officer David Brown watched as several spectators in the courtroom dabbed at their eyes, moved by the profound transformation they had witnessed. This wasn't just about a silver cross or a dress code, it was about the power of informed, dignified resistance to create lasting change. Mr. Robinson, Judge Hoffman concluded, you've done more than defend your right to wear that cross today. You've provided this court with a valuable lesson in how constitutional principles should inform even our most routine decisions. This court is gratified by your presentation and persuaded by your arguments. William Anderson gathered his papers, knowing that they had just been part of something much larger than a simple legal victory. His client had demonstrated how the same dignity and intelligence that had helped him transform baseball could be applied to the legal system. The tension that had filled the courtroom at the beginning of the day had transformed into something else entirely, a shared sense of having witnessed a moment of genuine significance. Jackie Robinson had once again broken barriers, not with dramatic confrontation, but with knowledge, dignity, and unshakable composure. Mary Collins looked down at her notes, knowing that her article would need to capture not just the legal arguments, but the broader significance of what had transpired. Robinson had demonstrated that true change often comes not from loud confrontation, but from quiet, informed persistence. As the judge prepared to move on to other cases, the courtroom remained hushed, still processing what they had witnessed. Jackie Robinson stood for a moment longer, the silver cross at his neck catching the afternoon light, a symbol not just of religious faith but of the power of principled resistance. 6 months after that remarkable day in the Virginia courthouse, the impact of Jackie Robinson's legal victory continued to ripple through the American judicial system. On a warm spring afternoon, Mary Collins sat at her desk at the local newspaper, reviewing a stack of letters that had poured in since her article about the courthouse confrontation had been syndicated nationwide. Each envelope contained similar stories of courage, of dignity, and of the power of knowledge to transform conflict into progress. The transcript of that day's proceedings, meticulously recorded by Patricia Stevens, had indeed become required reading in several law schools across the country. Legal scholars were particularly struck by how Robinson had managed to elevate a simple dress code violation into a meaningful discussion of constitutional principles, all while maintaining the highest standards of courtroom decorum. Judge Hoffman's courtroom had undergone its own transformation. The judge, known for his strict interpretation of courthouse rules, had emerged from the encounter with a notably different approach to matters of religious expression. His revised guidelines, directly influenced by Robinson's arguments, had been adopted by several other jurisdictions, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond Virginia. William Anderson found himself regularly contacted by other attorneys seeking details about that day's arguments. How had Robinson prepared? What sources had he studied? The lawyer would explain how his client had spent countless evening hours studying legal precedents, applying the same dedication to understanding the law that he had shown in mastering baseball. Robert Phillips, who had witnessed countless cases from his clerk's position, now used the Robinson incident as an example when training new courthouse staff. "It's not just about what happened," he would explain, "but how it happened. Mr. Robinson showed us that the most powerful arguments are often delivered with dignity rather than drama." Harold Matthews had also been profoundly affected by that day. The prosecutor, who had initially viewed the Cross incident as a simple matter of courthouse protocol, now found himself approaching cases with a broader perspective on constitutional rights and human dignity. He had even begun citing Robinson's arguments in his own cases when questions of religious freedom arose. Officer David Brown had kept his copy of Mary Collins' article, sharing it with his children as a lesson in how knowledge and composure could be more powerful than confrontation. The security officer, who had watched countless courthouse dramas unfold, used Robinson's example to teach young people about the true nature of strength. The impact extended far beyond the legal community. Civil rights leaders across the country pointed to Robinson's courthouse victory as a powerful example of how to challenge systemic barriers through knowledge and dignity rather than just protest. His approach, combining thorough preparation with unshakable composure, became a model for others facing similar challenges. Sarah Mitchell, a law student who had been in the courthouse that day for an unrelated case, had been so inspired by Robinson's presentation that she changed the focus of her studies to constitutional law. "What Mr. Robinson showed us," she would later write in her thesis, "was that the most effective challenges to injustice often come through mastery of the very system you're trying to change." The silver cross that had sparked the confrontation took on symbolic significance beyond its religious meaning. It became a reminder that standing firm in one's beliefs, when backed by knowledge and expressed with dignity, could create lasting change. Robinson continued to wear it at every public appearance, each glint of light catching the medal serving as a reminder of that transformative day. Judge Hoffman, speaking at a judicial conference later that year, reflected on how the incident had changed his own approach to the bench. "Mr. Robinson taught us all something about the true meaning of judicial wisdom," he admitted to his colleagues. "Sometimes, it takes someone from outside our legal circles to remind us of our fundamental principles." Mary Collins' follow-up articles tracked how Robinson's legal victory had influenced similar cases across the country. Courthouses that had once strictly enforced dress codes began adopting more nuanced approaches, particularly regarding religious expression. The baseball legend had once again broken barriers, this time in the legal system rather than on the diamond. Patricia Stevens had begun keeping a separate copy of the transcript to share with visitors who asked about it. "The words themselves are powerful," she would explain, "but what the transcript can't capture is the dignity with which Mr. Robinson presented them. It was like watching someone teach rather than argue." The law schools that added the case to their curriculum found that it served as more than just a lesson in constitutional law. It became a masterclass in how to present legal arguments. effectively showing future lawyers that the most powerful advocacy often comes wrapped in respect and dignity rather than aggressive confrontation. William Anderson noticed a change in how his fellow attorneys approached similar cases. Rather than immediately moving to confrontation, many began taking what they called the Robinson approach, thoroughly researching precedents and presenting arguments with quiet confidence rather than dramatic flourish. Robert Phillips observed how the courthouse itself seemed different in the months following the incident. The clerk noticed more religious symbols being worn openly, not as acts of defiance but as expressions of protected rights. The atmosphere had shifted from one of rigid enforcement to thoughtful consideration of constitutional principles. Harold Matthews found himself referring to the case regularly in his own practice. The prosecutor had begun approaching religious expression cases with a new perspective, often citing Robinson's arguments about how constitutional protections shouldn't stop at the courthouse door. The broader civil rights movement took note of how Robinson had achieved this victory. Here was a model of change that didn't require marches or protests, though those remained vital tools, but could be achieved through knowledge, preparation, and unshakable dignity. It added another dimension to the ongoing struggle for equality. As baseball season approached again, sports writers covering Robinson's games began noting how his legal victory had added another layer to his already remarkable legacy. He had shown that the same qualities that had helped him integrate baseball, courage, dignity, and relentless preparation, could transform other arenas of American life. Judge Hoffman's courtroom became something of a quiet landmark. Lawyers and law students would sometimes visit just to sit where Robinson had stood, hoping to absorb something of the wisdom and dignity he had displayed that day. The judge himself seemed to approach each case with greater consideration for the constitutional principles Robinson had so eloquently defended. Mary Collins would later write that the true impact of that day couldn't be measured just in legal precedents or changed policies. The real transformation was in how it demonstrated that lasting change often comes not through dramatic confrontation, but through the quiet power of knowledge combined with unwavering dignity. As spring turned to summer, and another baseball season was in full swing, Jackie Robinson continued to wear his silver cross, now a symbol of something larger than personal faith. It had become a reminder that the fight for justice and equality could be won not just on baseball diamonds or in protest marches, but in courtrooms and institutions, through knowledge, preparation, and unshakable dignity. The legacy of that day continued to grow, touching lives far beyond the legal system. It became a story passed down in law schools and civil rights organizations, a reminder that true change often comes not from shouting the loudest, but from standing firm with knowledge, dignity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. And in courthouses across America, whenever questions of religious expression arose, someone would inevitably mention the Robinson precedent, referring not just to the legal decision, but to the way it was achieved through the power of knowledge, the strength of dignity, and the courage to stand firm in one's convictions while respecting the very institutions one seeks to change.